Marcus Holt had been staring at the same constellation for 11 minutes when it moved. Not drifted, the way stars do over hours of observation. Moved. A deliberate shift, 3 degrees east, then back to position, like something testing the limits of its cage. He lowered his telescope and rubbed his eyes, chalking it up to fatigue. He'd been on the observatory deck since sunset, logging coordinates for the annual meteor survey, his coffee gone cold in its thermos, his logbook filled with the same data he'd recorded for 19 years. He raised the telescope again. The constellation was different. Sigma Draconis, which should have been positioned at azimuth 273 degrees, was now at 276. He checked his calibration, ran the alignment sequence twice, confirmed the telescope's mount was locked. Everything was correct, except the sky. Marcus pulled out his phone and opened the astronomy app he'd helped design, the one that overlaid constellation maps onto camera views with arc-second precision. He pointed it upward. The app showed Sigma Draconis, exactly where it should be, 273 degrees. But through the telescope, through his own eyes, the star sat 3 degrees off position. The app was showing him a different sky than the one above his head. He lowered the phone and looked up with naked eyes. The stars looked normal, familiar, the same patterns he'd memorized as a child. But something was wrong with the spaces between them. The darkness wasn't quite dark enough. It had texture, like static on a dead channel. Like the night sky was a screen, and someone had just adjusted the resolution. Then, all at once, every star in the northern hemisphere shifted 1 degree clockwise and stopped. Chiat ER1. The emergency call came through at 2:47 a.m., pulling Marcus from the half-sleep he'd fallen into after 3 hours of frantic documentation. The voice on the other end was Dr. Sarah Chen, director of the Atmospheric Studies Institute, and the only person in the city who'd believe what he was about to tell her. "Marcus," she said, and her voice had the flat quality of someone who'd already accepted something impossible. "Are you seeing this?" "The sky's wrong," Marcus said. Every star in the northern hemisphere shifted position at midnight. Sigma Draconis, Polaris, Vega, all of them. 1 degree clockwise. The astronomy apps still show the old positions, but if you look up. "I know," Sarah interrupted. "We've been getting calls from amateur astronomers across 6 states. They're all reporting the same thing. But Marcus, it's not just the stars. The satellites are gone." Marcus sat up. "What do you mean gone?" "Every artificial satellite in northern orbital paths. GPS, weather monitoring. Communications arrays. They're not in their expected positions. We're getting telemetry that says they're exactly where they should be. But optical confirmation shows empty sky. It's like someone edited the night sky and forgot to update the satellites." Marcus moved to his computer and pulled up the live satellite tracking feed. Hundreds of objects crawled across the display in their predicted orbits, their telemetry green and nominal. He opened a second window, showing the live video feed from the observatory's all-sky camera. Empty space where the satellites should be. The data said they were there. The sky said otherwise. "This isn't an equipment malfunction," Marcus said. "This is system-wide. Every instrument that relies on pre-existing astronomical data is showing us the old sky. But direct observation shows the new one. That's why I'm calling," Sarah said. "I need you to come to the Institute. Now. We're assembling everyone we can trust, and trust is a very short list right now. Because 6 hours ago, the National Weather Service sent out a memo declaring this a mass hallucination event caused by atmospheric ionization. They're already controlling the narrative. Marcus looked at his logbook, at 19 years of careful observations, at data that proved the sky had just rewritten itself. I'll be there in 30 minutes. He grabbed his telescope, his laptop, and the backup hard drive containing every observation he'd made since midnight. As he headed for the exit, he glanced back at the all-sky camera feed. For just a moment, a single frame. The stars weren't stars at all. They were pixels. Individual points of light arranged in a grid pattern, evenly spaced, geometrically perfect. Then the next frame showed stars again, random and natural and completely wrong. The sky wasn't moving. The sky was updating. CHTER2. The Atmospheric Studies Institute occupied the top 3 floors of a converted industrial building on the city's east side, its roof bristling with antennas and sensor arrays that looked like the skeletal remains of something that used to listen better. Marcus arrived to find the main conference room packed with 12 people. He recognized astronomers, atmospheric physicists, a satellite engineer, and 2 programmers who specialized in orbital mechanics. Sarah stood at the head of the table, a projection screen behind her showing a split view. Predicted sky versus observed sky. The differences were undeniable. "Thank you for coming," Sarah said as Marcus took a seat. "I know it's late. Or early. Time feels negotiable right now. What we're about to discuss stays in this room, because if it leaves, we'll all be declared unfit for professional observation, and our funding will disappear by morning." She gestured to the screen. At midnight Eastern, the northern hemisphere sky underwent a coordinated positional shift. Every star, 1 degree clockwise rotation around true north. At 0.16 a.m. it happened again. Another degree. It's been happening every 17 minutes since. We're now 41 degrees off the original positions. One of the programmers, a man named Chen who Marcus recognized from orbital conferences, raised his hand. "Rotation around what axis? If the Earth's rotation changed, we'd feel it. Tidal forces, atmospheric disruption, earthquakes. We're not seeing any of that, because the Earth isn't rotating differently," Sarah said. "The sky is. Or more accurately, the visual representation of the sky is changing while the underlying gravitational and electromagnetic reality remains constant. GPS satellites are exactly where their telemetry says they are, exerting the correct gravitational influence, broadcasting on the correct frequencies. But we can't see them. The light isn't reaching us correctly, or it's reaching us from the wrong source." Marcus opened his laptop and pulled up his observations. "I captured 300 frames between midnight and 2 a.m. I ran them through pattern recognition software. The star movements aren't random. They're following a programmed sequence. Each shift is precisely 1 degree. Each interval is precisely 17 minutes. Whatever's happening, it's deliberate and it's been planned to the second." The satellite engineer, a woman named Torres, leaned forward. "If this is deliberate, who's running it? You can't just edit the sky. You'd need to control light propagation across the entire visible spectrum for thousands of miles of atmosphere. That's not technology. That's physics violation. Unless," Sarah said quietly, "the sky we're seeing isn't the real sky." The room went silent. Marcus felt the words settle like cold water in his chest. Sarah continued. What if what we've been looking at our entire lives is a projection? A simulation layer overlaid on actual space. And what we're witnessing now is someone updating that layer, changing the parameters, rotating the display. That's insane, Chen said. But his voice lacked conviction. Sarah pulled up a new image. A spectrum analysis of starlight captured at midnight, and again at 2 a.m. This is the light signature from Sigma Draconis. Before and after the shift, they're different. Not in wavelength, not in luminosity, but in coherence. The light from the new position has a digital signature. It's not continuous electromagnetic radiation. It's pulsed. Discrete packets at a frequency that matches high bandwidth data transmission. Marcus stared at the spectrum. The implications were vertigo-inducing. You're saying the stars aren't stars. They're data points in a display system. I'm saying the stars we see might not be the stars that actually exist. Sarah corrected. There could be a real sky out there, unchanged, constant. But we're looking through a filter. And that filter just started glitching. Torres pulled out a tablet and began typing. If that's true, there should be artifacts. Compression errors, rendering glitches, places where the simulation breaks down. I'm pulling up low-frequency radio observations. If the visible sky is a projection, there might be electromagnetic leakage from the projection system itself. She worked in silence for 3 minutes, while the room watched. Then she stopped. Her face went pale. There's a signal, Torres said. Broadcasting at 1.4 gigahertz. The same frequency as the old cosmic microwave background noise. Except it's not noise, it's structured. It's a carrier wave, and it's coming from directly overhead. From everywhere overhead. Like the entire sky is one massive transmitter. Sarah closed the projection. We need to find out what changed. And why someone wants us looking at a different sky. CHEPTR3. Marcus spent the next 4 hours in the Institute's archive, pulling historical astronomical records and comparing them to current observations. By 6 a.m., he'd found 17 discrepancies that predated the midnight update. Stars cataloged in 1980, 3 that no longer appeared in current surveys, nebulae that had subtly changed shape between observations, a pulsar whose rotation rate had somehow increased without anyone noticing. All of them small. All of them within the margin of error. All of them, in retrospect, impossible. He brought the findings to Sarah, who was in the radio observation room with Torres. They'd spent the past 3 hours analyzing the carrier wave signal, trying to decode its structure. The whiteboard behind them was covered in equations and waveform diagrams. The signal isn't random, Torres said as Marcus entered. It's a data stream. Massive bandwidth, maybe petabytes per second. I think we're looking at real-time rendering. The sky we see is being generated on the fly based on this data. Sarah added, and if it's being rendered, there's a render engine. A system processing the data and projecting it as visible light. We think it's atmospheric. The ionosphere has conductive properties that could theoretically support a plasma-based projection system if someone had the technology to manipulate it at that scale. Marcus set down his historical data. I found proof this has been happening for decades. Small changes, gradual enough that nobody noticed. Whoever's running this has been maintaining the simulation carefully, keeping it consistent with predictions. But last night, they stopped being careful. They made a big change and they did it fast. That's not maintenance. That's an update. Like they're preparing for something. Or covering something up. Sarah said. She pulled up a new display. Astronomical data from the past 6 hours, filtered for unusual events. 3 hours ago, every major observatory in the southern hemisphere reported a gamma ray burst from the direction of the galactic core. Massive energy signature. Unprecedented intensity. But here's the thing: northern hemisphere observatories recorded nothing. No burst. No energy spike. Like it didn't happen for us. Because our sky is filtered, Marcus said. We're not seeing the real sky. We're seeing what someone wants us to see. Torres nodded. And last night at midnight, they updated the filter. Rotated our view 41 degrees and counting. But why? What's in the real sky that they don't want us looking at? The lights in the observation room flickered. Once, twice, then died completely. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. Sarah's phone buzzed. She checked it, and her expression went flat. National Weather Service just issued a statement, she said. All astronomical observations made in the past 6 hours are officially unreliable due to ionospheric disturbance. They're recommending all observatories suspend operations until further notice. Marcus felt the walls closing in. They're shutting us down. Whoever's running the sky update, they have institutional control. Then we go off-grid, Sarah said. She grabbed a backpack and started loading equipment. Portable spectrum analyzer, backup drives, her personal telescope. There's a private observation site 40 miles north. Old radar installation, abandoned since the 90s. No network connection. No official oversight. If we're going to document this without interference, that's where we do it. Torres and Marcus exchanged looks. Then they started packing. The three of them left through the service exit at 7 a.m. Just as 2 vehicles with federal plates pulled into the Institute's parking lot. CFTER-4. The abandoned radar installation sat on a hilltop surrounded by pine forest, its central tower a rusted finger pointing at the sky. Sarah picked the lock on the main gate, and they drove up the access road in Marcus's van, headlights cutting through the pre-dawn gray. By the time they'd hauled their equipment to the tower's observation platform, the sun was rising, and the world looked almost normal. Marcus set up his telescope, while Torres assembled the spectrum analyzer. Sarah configured her laptop to pull astronomical data from international sources, routing through encrypted channels to avoid detection. The plan was simple. Observe the sky for the next 24 hours, document every update, and trace the carrier wave back to its source. First rotation happened at midnight, Marcus said, checking his watch. Next one should be at 7:17. 6 minutes. They waited. The sun climbed higher, washing out any chance of seeing stars. But the spectrum analyzer would still detect the carrier wave shift when it happened. Marcus watched the seconds count down. At exactly 7:17, the analyzer spiked. Torres swore softly. There, she said. Another rotation. 1 degree clockwise. And the signal just doubled in intensity. Whatever's projecting the sky, it's getting stronger. Sarah pulled up the astronomical data feeds. Southern Hemisphere observatories are reporting another gamma ray event, even more intense than the first. But look at the northern feeds. She pointed to the screen. Nothing. Complete blackout of any high-energy events. We're being filtered from something happening in real space. Something catastrophic. Marcus felt a chill despite the morning warmth. What if the sky isn't being updated? What if it's being protected? Like a quarantine screen. keeping us from seeing something that would panic everyone, or something that would reveal who's running the screen, Torres said. She adjusted the analyzer. I'm picking up a secondary signal now. Lower frequency, buried under the carrier wave. It's a countdown. Sarah moved to the analyzer. How long? Torres checked the frequency pattern, did the math in her head. If the rotations continue at 17-minute intervals, and the countdown is tied to complete rotation, 360 degrees, means we have about 91 hours until the sky completes a full circle, and whatever they're hiding will be directly overhead. Marcus looked up. The daylight sky was blue and clear, and completely artificial. Somewhere above that blue, beyond the projection layer, something was happening that required the entire northern hemisphere to be looking the wrong direction. Something worth maintaining a 50-year simulation to conceal. His phone buzzed. A text from a number he didn't recognize. Dr. Holt. You've left the institute. That was unwise. We need to speak. The installation you're at has no network, but you're not alone. Look north. Marcus turned. Through the trees half a mile away, he saw a glint of reflected light. Binoculars or a scope. Someone watching them. Torres saw it too. We need to move. Now. But Sarah was staring at her laptop, at the astronomical feed she'd been monitoring. Wait. Look at this. Private observation from a telescope in northern Canada. They're above our latitude, outside the filter zone. They caught something. The image on her screen showed a section of night sky. And in that sky, where there should have been stars, there was a structure. Massive, geometric, impossibly vast. Something architectural, something artificial. Something that blocked out entire constellations like a wall. That's not a gamma-ray burst, Marcus whispered. That's construction. The glint in the trees moved closer. CHTR-5, they abandoned the radar tower and drove north, following back roads that wound through state forest land. Sarah navigating from paper maps she'd found in the tower's old operations room. The van's radio crackled with emergency broadcasts, atmospheric disturbance, observe indoor precautions, await official updates. The same bureaucratic language that meant something had gone catastrophically wrong, and no one was allowed to say what. Marcus drove while Torres worked on her laptop, trying to isolate the countdown signal they'd detected. Sarah called the Canadian observatory that had captured the structure image, but the line just rang. No answer. When she tried alternate numbers, she got disconnected immediately. Someone was severing communication with anyone outside the filter zone. I've got the signal isolated, Torres said. The countdown isn't just a timer. It's synchronized with the rotation updates. Every 17 minutes, the sky shifts 1 degree, and the countdown advances 1 unit. But there's something else embedded in the signal. Coordinates. Spatial coordinates updating in real time. I think they're tracking something. Something moving through actual space, getting closer. Closer to what? Sarah asked. To Earth, Torres said. The coordinates show an object approaching from galactic north. Current velocity puts it at 0.03% light speed. At that rate, it reaches Earth's orbital space in approximately 91 hours. Exactly when the sky completes its rotation. Marcus felt his hands tighten on the wheel. They're turning our view away from it. Rotating the projection so we're all looking in the wrong direction when it arrives. Not just turning us away, Sarah said. Preparing us. Training us to ignore the sky. To distrust our own observations. to accept official explanations over direct evidence. By the time that object arrives, nobody will believe what they're seeing, because the sky's been wrong for 4 days, and the authorities have been telling us it's all atmospheric disturbance. The van's dashboard screen flickered. For just a moment, the GPS display showed their position. Then it glitched and showed a different location, 200 miles north, at the border. Then it corrected. Marcus pulled over. "They're trying to track us through the GPS," he said. "We need to disable it." Torres popped the panel and yanked the GPS module. The screen went dark. "We're off-grid now. But so is our navigation." Sarah spread the paper map across her lap. "There's an old observatory 60 miles north of here. Privately funded. No government connections. If anyone's still documenting the sky updates without interference, it's them." They drove in silence for 20 minutes. The forest pressing close on both sides, the afternoon sun filtering through pine branches. Marcus kept checking the rearview mirror. No vehicles behind them. No signs of pursuit. But the feeling of being watched persisted. A pressure at the base of his skull that had nothing to do with visible threats. At 3:34, the sky shifted again. Marcus felt it more than saw it, a subtle wrongness in the light, like reality adjusting its settings. Torres checked her portable analyzer. "Rotation confirmed," she said. "We're now 73 degrees off original position, and the countdown signal just got louder. Whatever's approaching, it's accelerating." The observatory appeared through the trees at dusk, a white dome on a hilltop. Its structure showing decades of weathering, but maintained. Functional. Its telescope mount visible through an open shutter. They parked and climbed the access path. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the control room was active, screens glowing, equipment humming. And sitting at the main console, an elderly man with white hair and calm eyes looked up as they entered. "Dr. Holt," he said. "Dr. Chen. Ms. Torres. I've been expecting you. My name is Dr. Raymond Pierce. I've been documenting the sky simulation for 37 years. Please, sit down. We don't have much time, and there's a great deal you need to understand." CAER 6. Pierce poured coffee from a thermos that looked older than the observatory itself, and gestured for them to sit around a table covered in astronomical charts that made Marcus's eyes hurt to look at. The charts showed constellations, but wrong, shifted, overlapping in ways that suggested multiple sky versions superimposed. "The simulation began in 1947, Pierce said. "Not immediately after what you're thinking of. The initial installation took 3 years. By 1950, the ionospheric projection system was operational, and the Northern Hemisphere started seeing a curated sky. The project's designation was SHERD. Appropriate, since shepherds guide sheep to pasture while keeping them looking the wrong direction from the wolves." Sarah leaned forward. "You're saying the government has been projecting a false sky for 75 years. Why? Not government," Pierce corrected. "Governments. Plural. This is a global coordination effort. Every nation with satellite launch capability is invested in maintaining SHERD because the alternative is mass panic. You see, in 1947, we detected something. An object in high orbit, far beyond the moon, matching Earth's rotation precisely. Artificial origin. Observing us. We called it the Witness." Marcus felt his coffee go cold in his hand. "An alien observation station. More like an early warning buoy," Pierce said. We've had 75 years to study its transmissions, to decode fragments of its purpose. The witness is a marker, a signal beacon broadcasting our location and development status to something else, something much farther away. And every few decades, that something sends a probe to check on the beacon's status. The last probe arrived in 1973. Before that, 1951. The pattern suggests intervals of approximately 22 years. Torres did the math. 1970. 3 plus 22 is 1995. Plus 22 is 2017. We're 9 years overdue. 8 years and 3 months, Pierce corrected. Until 3 days ago, when deep space observation detected the new probe launching from a structure beyond Neptune. Not the same object as before. Larger. Faster. And it's not slowing down for observation. It's coming here with purpose. Sarah stared at the charts. So SHPHERD is rotating our view away from the approach vector, keeping the general population from seeing the probe arrive. More than that, Pierce said. SHPHERD is being reconfigured entirely. The old sky was designed for long-term passive observation. The new sky, the one being updated every 17 minutes, is designed for intervention. Look at this. He pulled up a display showing the carrier wave structure Torres had detected. This isn't just projection. It's modification. The ionosphere is being restructured into a phased array antenna, powerful enough to generate electromagnetic pulses in the petawatt range. When the probe arrives, CHRD won't hide it from us. CHRD will try to destroy it. Marcus processed the implications. They're turning the sky into a weapon that requires the entire northern hemisphere's ionosphere as its emitter array, Pierce said. The rotation isn't about view angle. It's about alignment. Getting every atmospheric layer, every conductive particle, oriented correctly for the moment of firing. In 91 hours, the sky completes rotation. The probe enters optimal range, and SHPHERD fires. Either the probe is destroyed or it fires back. Torres finished. And 7 billion people are sitting under the target. Pierce nodded slowly. That's why they're suppressing observation. Why they're declaring ionospheric disturbance and unreliable data. They can't afford panic. They can't afford evacuation. Because there's nowhere to evacuate to. If SHPHERD fails, if the probe retaliates, the atmospheric discharge will render the entire hemisphere uninhabitable. We're the sacrificial shield, and we don't even know we're in the line of fire. The room fell silent, except for the hum of equipment and the soft tick of Pierce's old wall clock counting down to a deadline measured in rotations of a fake sky. Sarah finally spoke. What do we do? Pierce looked at her with eyes that had seen 75 years of concealed truth. We document. We broadcast. We give people the choice to look up and see what's really there. Even if they can't change what happens, they deserve to know. That's what I've been doing for 37 years. Watching the real sky. Recording the truth. Waiting for someone to care enough to listen. He handed Marcus a drive. Everything's on here. 75 years of documentation. Proof of SHPHERD. Proof of the witness. Proof of the probes. Take it. Find a way to get it public before the countdown reaches 0. Don't let them die without knowing what they're dying for. Marcus took the drive. It was heavier than it should have been. Outside, the sky shifted again. 90 degrees off true. SHPHERD 7, they spent the next 6 hours at Pierce's observatory, copying data, verifying sources, building an airtight case that would be impossible to dismiss as conspiracy theory. By midnight, they had documentation spanning 7 decades. Classified memos Pierce had obtained through sources Marcus didn't ask about. Spectral analysis showing the ionospheric manipulation. Orbital predictions that had been systematically scrubbed from public databases. And most damning, a video recording from 1973 showing the last probe's arrival and subsequent destruction via atmospheric discharge. The video lasted 4 minutes. Marcus watched it 3 times, unable to look away from the moment when the night sky turned white and something the size of a city block disintegrated in electromagnetic fire, while 7 billion people slept unaware beneath the weapon. How did Pierce get this? He asked Sarah. He was part of the Eshapard operations team, she said quietly. He quit in 1986 when they started discussing permanent population control measures. He's been documenting from the outside ever since. At 2 a.m., they finalized their distribution plan. Simultaneous upload to 30 different platforms. Encrypted copies to journalists in 12 countries. Automated release if they failed to cancel the timer. The same approach Alina Voss had used with the cartographic archive, Marcus realized. The same desperate strategy of people who knew they were outmatched, but refused to stay silent. Torres configured the upload, while Sarah prepared a cover message, explaining the evidence in clear, non-technical language. Marcus stood at the observatory dome, looking up through the open shutter at the false stars turning overhead. Every 17 minutes, he felt the rotation. Every rotation brought the alignment closer to complete. Upload ready, Torres said. On your word. Marcus looked at Pierce, who sat at his monitoring station with the peaceful expression of someone who'd already accepted the consequences of truth. Once we do this, they'll know where we are. They already know, Pierce said. The question is whether you're willing to be found standing behind what you've revealed, or found running from it. Marcus nodded to Torres. Send it. The upload began. 30 simultaneous streams, each targeting a different platform, each containing the complete evidence package. The progress bars crawled upward 10%, 20%. Marcus watched the sky through the dome shutter. No change. No sudden interruption. Just stars rotating on schedule toward their firing position. 40%. 50%. Sarah's phone started buzzing. Then Torres's. Then Marcus's. Messages flooding in from blocked numbers, all with variations of the same warning. Sias transmasmun. Ionosphere zasnisisti lazarili. Oaf silasifwidi obisar vidaim dita. Fadiral response en rodu. They're trying to scare us into stopping, Sarah said. But her hand was shaking as she held her phone. 60%. 70%. The lights in the observatory flickered. Through the windows, Marcus saw vehicles approaching up the access road, their headlights cutting through the dark. 4 vehicles. 6. 8. More behind them. Upload at 85%, Torres said. Her voice was steady, but her face had gone pale. Almost there. Pierce stood and moved to the door. I'll speak with them. Buy you 90 seconds. Make them count. Ducker Pierce. Marcus started. I've been waiting 37 years for this conversation, Pierce said. I'm ready. He walked out, closing the door behind him. Through the window, Marcus watched Pierce descend the path toward the approaching vehicles. Watched armed figures emerge, weapons drawn. watched Pierce raise his hands and keep walking, his white hair catching the headlights, his posture straight and unafraid. 90%. 95%. Sarah grabbed Marcus's arm. Once this hits 100, we need to run. There's a service tunnel under the observatory. Leads to a utility road half a mile down the slope. Pierce showed it to me while you were copying files. What about Pierce? Marcus asked. He chose this, Sarah said. Don't waste it. 100%. Upload complete. All 30 streams confirmed successful. The evidence was public, accessible, irrefutable. And in the parking lot below, federal agents were surrounding Dr. Raymond Pierce while he calmly explained something Marcus was too far away to hear. Go, Torres said. Now, they ran. CAPTR-8. The service tunnel was concrete and rust, narrow enough to scrape shoulders, angled down through bedrock, toward a maintenance access that opened behind a false panel in a Forest Service shed. They emerged into pre-dawn darkness, their phones dead, their equipment left behind, nothing remaining except the knowledge that somewhere, in the digital sphere, their evidence was spreading like fire through dry forest. Sarah led them through the trees to the utility road Pierce had mentioned. No vehicles visible. Just gravel and pine shadows, and the distant sound of voices from the observatory above. They walked for an hour, heading generally south, avoiding roads, until they reached a ranger station with a payphone that still worked. Marcus called a contact who owed him a favor and arranged a pickup. While they waited, Torres checked her portable analyzer. The carrier wave was still active, still counting down, still rotating the sky toward firing position. But now there was something new. A second frequency, broadcasting at irregular intervals. A response signal. The probe, Torres said. It knows we detected it. It's transmitting back. Transmitting what? Sarah asked. Torres adjusted the analyzer, isolating the signal structure. Her expression went from confusion to understanding to horror in 3 seconds. Coordinates. It's broadcasting coordinates. Thousands of them. Every major city in the northern hemisphere. Marcus felt the implications settle like ice. It's choosing targets. Because it knows what we're planning. It's been listening to ER's carrier wave for months, analyzing the ionospheric restructuring. It knows we're building a weapon, and it's preparing to respond. Sarah stared at the analyzer. Then everyone's right. This was never about observation or contact. This was always about defense. And we just told the world that their governments have been hiding the threat and preparing a first strike. We didn't expose a cover-up. We exposed a survival strategy. The weight of what they'd done pressed down on Marcus. The evidence was public now. People would demand answers. They'd demand their governments explain PHERD. They'd demand to know about the witness, the probes, the weapon hidden in the sky. And in the chaos of revelation, in the weeks it would take to verify, and accept and understand, the countdown would reach 0. The alignment would complete, and the probe would be right there, listening, learning, preparing its response to an atmospheric weapon that might be humanity's only defense. We have to take it back, Marcus said. We have to tell people to ignore what we sent. Say it was fake, doctored, whatever it takes to stop the panic. It's too late, Sarah said quietly. She held up her phone, its screen cracked but functional, showing news feeds from a dozen sources. The story was everywhere. Evidence of alien observation. Proof of government concealment. Countdown to atmospheric weapon discharge. And underneath every headline, comment sections filled with the same question repeated thousands of times. What do we do? The answer, Marcus realized, was nothing. There was nothing to do except wait for the sky to complete its rotation. Wait for Shapyard to fire. And hope that 75 years of preparation and planning had been enough. Or watch it fail, and witness the retaliation. Their ride arrived. A forestry worker in a truck who asked no questions. They drove south toward the city, toward the millions of people who were just now beginning to understand that their sky had been fake their entire lives, and the real sky was full of thems that watched them and judged them, and were about to make decisions that would determine whether anyone survived to see tomorrow. The sun rose on a world that couldn't trust what it saw anymore. And overhead, invisible behind the daylight projection, the countdown continued. Epilogue. Marcus stood on the roof of the Atmospheric Studies Institute 8 hours after the update began, watching the sky complete its final rotation. The evidence he'd released had done exactly what he'd feared, exposed the truth, triggered global panic, forced governments to confirm Shapyard's existence, and made the probe's approach a matter of public knowledge. Now, with 12 hours remaining until optimal firing position, the entire northern hemisphere was looking up. Sarah and Torres stood beside him. Pierce had been released after 6 hours of detention. His statement consistent. He'd acted alone. The other observers were following his information without knowledge of its classified source. The lie had saved them, bought them time to witness the conclusion. The sky shifted one final time. 360 degrees. Complete rotation. Perfect alignment. And then, for the first time in 75 years, Shapyard turned off. The false stars disappeared. The projection layer dissolved, and humanity saw the real sky. It was full of structures. Massive, geometric, impossibly vast. Orbital installations, observation platforms, relay stations. The witness wasn't a single satellite. It was a network, grown over millennia, watching thousands of worlds. And the probe wasn't approaching anymore. It was here, had been here for days. Waiting. The probe sat in geosynchronous orbit, a sphere the size of the moon, its surface covered in sensors that tracked every radio transmission, every light emission, every desperate attempt at communication humanity had made in the past 78 hours. It had been listening, learning, deciding. Saichi. RD's weapon systems remained active. Marcus could feel them in the electromagnetic pressure that made his teeth ache. The ionosphere was fully charged, ready to fire. All it needed was the order. One command, and the probe would either be destroyed, or humanity would learn what kind of retaliation followed a failed first strike. The command never came. Instead, at hour 43 minutes before optimal firing position, every screen in every country displayed the same message. Yo ionosphere ID. Mu-I-E-D-U 2-1-E-O-B. Eerie-A-D-T-O-C-U-S-T-S-K-Y. The probe's surface began to glow. Not with weapon discharge, but with something else. Information. Broadcasting in every frequency, every language, every format humanity had ever used. Not a threat. Not a demand. Just data. Answers to questions people had been asking since they first looked up. Are we alone? Where did we come from? What happens next? And woven through it all, an invitation. The witness network was old. maintained by civilizations that had graduated from fear to curiosity. Earth had been marked as a developing world, worth watching, worth waiting for. The periodic probes were assessments, checking if humanity was ready to join the network or still trapped in its own defensive paranoia. Sheep HRD had been built by people who assumed first contact meant invasion. The probe had arrived to learn if they were right. Marcus looked at the real sky, at the network stretched across it like a web of light and technology and hope. He thought about the false stars he'd spent 19 years cataloging, the comfortable lie that had kept people from seeing the vast collaborative architecture waiting overhead. And he wondered how many other worlds were still hiding under their own HERD projections, still afraid to look up. Sarah's hand found his. "What do we do now?" Marcus smiled. "We learn. And we teach people to look up without fear." The probe pulsed once, acknowledgement. And the real sky shimmered, with 1,000 civilizations welcoming Earth to the conversation it had been too frightened to join. Above them, the stars finally showed their truth, not threats, but neighbors.